Set in 1666 Jamaica, Cutthroat Island is the story of Morgan Adams, played by Gina Davis, daughter of the pirate Black Harry. Black Harry and two of his brothers inherited from their father pieces of the only known map that leads to the hidden treasure inside Cutthroat Island. To seize this treasure, the barbaric pirate Dog Brown, played by Franklin Langella, Black Harry's brother, decides to be an only child and wipe out his brothers to steal the map. Now, Morgan needs to find the treasure before her uncle does and avenge her father. But for such, she will have to prove that she is more than capable of being the captain of her father's ship, the Morning Star. Deal with the thief William Shaw, played by Matthew Modine, who knows Latin and can help her decipher the map and escape from the pursuit of the governor Anse Lee, who wants her either dead or half the treasure. This movie is rather infamous for having not only sunk the career of many people attached to it, like Gina Davis, but also the entire swashbuckling genre, at least until Pirates of the Caribbean showed up many years later. Its production was troubled to say the least. Downright hellish, the company producing it was already in quite a bit of debt, the director was married to Davis and wanted to launch her career as an action star, and his directing style was so messy that many people quit, also leading to many recasts and entire sets being reworked from scrap because he didn't pay attention when they were built. Not helping matters, he tried to make his actors do all their own stunts whenever possible, tried to call stars like Michael Douglas only for them to step down when realizing that they'd play a stepping stool for Davis, and so on. And so on. Like, a lot on. Seriously, this was a horror show. Check it out. As the last nail in the coffin, Cutthroat Island hit the theaters in 1995, meaning it had the bad luck of competing against Jumanji of all things, and very few could go against Robin Williams in his prime. On the visuals aspect, first and foremost, this movie has a good photography. There are lots of pans and aerial shots and good angles to show the action happening. I'm a tad sad that movies nowadays don't have this sort of camera work. The wardrobe is interesting as well. There is the usual fanfare and styles of swashbuckling pirates of the time, but there is also an attempt to create something of its own, like for example, with how rugged the characters are and the utter hatred that this movie has for any source of sleeves. Most of the characters will be, at one point or another, with sleeveless vests, jackets, shirts and so on. Nothing bad, just a minor point, a curiosity. Lastly, the sets and scenarios have a weird contrast to them. Some will be really good, others will look downright cheap. Morgan and her crew will travel through taverns, manors, fortresses and so on, and obviously ships and the deserted island. Every location will be fairly distinctive from each other, though it will be quite obvious when someone is going through a rehashed place, or a set built in a hurry, or a very rubbery prop. Not really bad, but it's more fitting for a cheesy romp than a movie that was supposed to resurrect the swashbuckling genre. Lastly, the visual style is interesting, clashing between old ideas and new, cheesy and serious. Not only for Morgan's, since she is mostly dressed in white and black a la older swashbuckling movies, but for everyone else. Dog isn't only dressed in black, but his sword is completely serrated, his pistol is adorned with bloodstones, and his ship has a death figurehead in order to show that yeah, he's a sadistic menace. Shaw looks a lot like Errol Flynn and his wardrobe also matches. And the movie isn't afraid to go rule of cool with a pirate that uses a chain akin to a ninja. In the acting style, this is where things start to get a bit wonky. Gina Davis was always a star in more subdued comedies and romances, and her style, at least from what I can remember, was more contained, as the normal person going through something weird, with more surprised expressions, like Beetlejuice. Switching to the action genre demanded a different approach. Some actors, when they go through the action genre, go full charisma route, Schwarzenegger for example, with cocky smiles and utter confidence. Other actors go the full contained ire route, like Clint Eastwood and so on and so on. Here it seems that the director wanted Gina Davis to go full bombastic rogue, full of flair. Unsurprisingly, considering Davis' background, it works better when the actress is in a rather comedic situation, or in a more dramatic one. Sometimes when she has to play the dastardly rogue, her acting gets wooden, getting worse as the movie goes on. And I was told that this happened because she was kinda fed up with the whole ordeal and just wanted to wrap it up like the rest of the cast. Matthew Modine acts in a different but similar situation. It's evident here that he tried his best, seeing this movie as a platform to get into the stardom, and he did seem to jive well with his character, but by the end of the movie his acting also suffered a bit. It's not bad in either case. The acting is mostly good for an action movie barring some wooden moments. Heck, Gina and Matthew do have a good chemistry that is sadly sapped by the writing, but more of that for later. And sometimes she even sells that she's in fact a dastardly anti-heroine. The sole exception for this hit and miss acting is Frank Langella, who seems completely overjoyed in playing a psychopath pirate made of spite and ham.
But if you ever are disloyal to me the way you were to Morgan, it'll be my pleasure to cook you alive and eat you.
Weirdly, while he has his bouts of intense villainy and fury, I found that his acting was contained. Far too contained when you consider that this guy played Skeletor in the Masters of the Universe live action. Yes, truly chewing the scenario as if he was a kid in a house made of cotton candy. So I chalk it out to the director. A pity, I'd love to see how he'd fare if allowed to go full ham, but he's still by far one of the best things about this movie. In the action department, it's also composed of ups and downs. Weird ups and downs even. There was a really good action scene where Morgan is escaping with Shaw through the city while being bombarded by a ship's cannon fire. Explosions everywhere in a way that would make Michael Bay inspired. Then out of nowhere I watch Morgan crash through a window, roll over a balcony and land on the seat. The scene is shot in slow motion, so I had time to think, wow, they really hired a good stuntwoman for that. Oh, that stuntwoman really looks like Gina Davis. Wait a minute, that is Gina Davis! And lo and behold, I discovered that the director wanted the actors to do their own stunts whenever possible, and also discovered that Gina nearly died in that scene where the failed stunt made her land right in front of the carriage with horses at full gallop. Well, on one hand it did make many of the stunts far more interesting, and on the other hand it seems that have sapped the others, because while there are 2 or 3 visually stunning action sequences for the time, the rest of the movie keeps varying in quality. Punches, kicks and sword slashes that not only barely hit, but go way off course, and so on, as if the stuntmen were untrained or afraid. Matthew Modine knows fencing and it shows, but due to the script he barely shines. Sometimes the fight will be good and thrilling, others it will be sloppy, but one thing that I have to say is that the final fight between Morgan and Dog had a really good ending, except for a misplaced one-liner that would have been better said after the kill. So, like the rest of the movie, the acting varies wildly in quality. It has memorable moments though. For the writing, the story and plot are overall simple, not trying to hit too hard above its weight. It's a swashbuckling movie about pirates finding treasure, so most of it is spending trying to find the pieces of the map of the treasure, go to the said treasure, and having the final showdown against the eviler pirate. No surprises here, nor attempts to reinvent the wheel. The problems start with the characterization. While not as awful as nowadays Western media, you can see here the seed of what would become the dreaded "everybody is an asshole" trope. Excuse me for a second, Mr. Sunday wants to talk. What's up, Mr. Sunday? What's up? What's up, Mr. Sunday? Sure? Really? That's interesting. Okay. Thank you for your opinion, Mr. Sunday, and back to the review. Whenever Morgan is dealing with everyone else, she's an amusing rogue, but her dynamic with Shaw is all the slap slap kiss kiss that not only remains for 90% of the movie, depriving us from an unamusing dynamic, it gets way too old, way too fast because of how much of a she is. And sometimes these clashes are downright insanely stupid, if not downright suicidal. For example, why the will you haggle in a long, annoying banter about trust with the guy that is holding your map when he is about to die taking your map with him. What's worse is that it's no surprise that lots of bigger name actors bailed after reading the script. Shaw was written with a lot of potential and chemistry between a more pacifistic-leaning thief and an experienced, bloodier but blunt rogue. But the scales are tipped too much in her favor, far too much into Morgan's side, both in screen time and efficiency, making Shaw nearly inconsequential to the movie. He gets caught and captured so often that I nearly nicknamed him Prince Peach. Imagine Shaw and Morgan having to team up to take down Dog in a three-way fencing duel. But when push comes to shove after a long movie building their tenuous relationship, he just gets stuck while Morgan goes to save the day. Why set the character, give him interesting traits and a good dynamic with the lead if you're going to barely use him and just beat him at every turn? A better example is the dynamic between Ripley and Hicks in Aliens. Ripley is the focus and thus has more screen time, but the script knows how to use Hicks, show his strengths and failings, establish a rapport with Ripley even if the situation is tense, and he teaches her how to use the pulse rifle. Weirdly, but unsurprisingly considering the development hell this movie went through, the more the movie goes on, the sloppier the writing gets. So many continuity mistakes, people making extremely dumb decisions in order to push the plot forward, or worse. It never gets into awful territory, but it's enough to take down 2 pegs of what should be a simple story. But again, it's not bad, just a lot of wasted potential that could have made this movie great if properly used. There are several parts that I enjoyed, good jokes, nice action scenes and details that are often sorely missed nowadays. For example, no matter how much of a badass pirate Morgan is, she knows that if her crew starts a mutiny, she's toast. So she needs to convince them to chase this treasure, especially since she was recently given the captain position under dubious circumstances. So whenever she has to stop to talk the crew, the tension rises. Morgan stops on her tracks and changes her behavior, and this is very well expressed through Gina's acting. Another part that I loved is that Dog isn't just a ruthless and over-the-top. He is a brutal and efficient villain with more experience than Morgan in piracy, and the movie bothers to show him reading her moves and countering them. In my Puss in Boots The Last Wish review, I talked how villains need to be efficient to be a credible threat, and Dog aces it. So when it's time for the final showdown, you have a good tension which leads to a thrilling battle. For the soundtrack, while the whole movie is entirely cheesy but fun festival of missed opportunities, the only things that stand rock solid in these tempestuous unreal seas is Langela's acting and the movie's score. The soundtrack of this movie absolutely nails every single aspect with aplomb. You have the bombastic orchestra that heightens the sense of adventure, the mild-paced fun combat music to point out the silly nature of the fencing and so on. No wonder John Dabney was the only person to not only get out of this mess unscathed, but actually improve his career. It's something that must be heard. In the end, I heard that Cutthroat Island was one step away from greatness, and I agree. Standing on its own, it's simply a fun movie, although the directing flaws visibly seeped into it and sabotaged it. It could be grand, but ended just fun and cheesy. And as for spoilers, so many characters that are downright wasted. So in the final battle, the governor shows up, somehow. Did Dog go back to Jamaica and went to give him a lift to the treasure island in less than a day? And when the battle starts, where did the governor came from? What happened to him? I had to watch it twice to notice that he died in an explosion alongside a traitor. Generally, movies bother to stop and show when named characters die, especially if they are antagonists. Morgan's uncle could show up in the final battle to help her, but he has a case of dying too early to an admittedly good joke. And the movie's budget wouldn't survive a battle between 3 or worse 4 ships. Other continuity mistakes besides the teleporting governor include Morgan seemingly possessing the miracle of crew multiplication, insta drying black gunpowder and forgetting she has a hip wound. And every time the treasure shows up, it somehow gets bigger and smaller and bigger again. And lastly, if your ship is being attacked by a crew twice as big and just as experienced as yours, literally yelling "just fight harder" shouldn't work. But here it does, and the good guys win. I don't know if this is another continuity mistake because they just forgot the odds or sloppy writing, so I'll chalk up to both. Well, this is all for today. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and see you all next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe.